clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Bernardo knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong, but he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Bernardo had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion, and he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage. Every child knew about the Sky Ripper. The Transcendent Emperor had buried its pieces deep. And then, this Emperor's horrific sacrifices had brought it back to the surface. Bernardo wasn't exactly sure how to use the legendary weapon. But surely, there must be some way to do it without provoking another catastrophe. Had he, somehow, summoned the long-lost components of the legendary weapon out of the deep places of the Earth? It was more than Bernardo could fathom. But if he could find a legendary weapon, he would use it. As he set foot on the island, Bernardo couldn't help feeling a bit curious. Was Lupino still waiting to be rescued? No. He was probably drinking champagne with the ravens. Did ravens drink champagne? Did rabbits? Bernardo felt oddly thirsty, come to think of it. Why had he chosen the Sky Ripper? Was a long shot. He'd have to devote himself. Boy, if looks could kill. The people who had built this castle, did they even know what monstrous weapon lay hidden within their walls? The Sky Ripper could destroy anything it touched, or so the legend said. As the Transcendent Emperor had fought the lost gods, thousands of thousands had died. But Bernardo had been through wars. The only merciful war was a short one.
Silent type.
There had to be a way to use the Sky Ripper without causing a catastrophe. Why? Maybe it's always dangerous, he imagined Zenobia saying. Always the voice of reason, that one. Well, there had to be a way to use the Sky Ripper because not being able to use it was boring. So there. Slippy's hit, he thought.
smell any better when you're dead.
There it was. Skyripper's armature. The stuff that dreams are made of. Engineers' dreams, anyway. The device was intricate. No one alive had the skill to make a thing like it. How was it part of a weapon at all? He'd have to ask a scientist. But first, he'd get the second piece. Skyripper had a heart. A core that had come to rest on the next island. Well, there was another island he could reach. Zenobia had just invaded it with her father's Raven battalions. She must be encamped there still. But fighting Zenobia now, that made no sense at all. He'd already sacrificed one friend to get this armature, was it? He didn't need to hurry to face her. She would find him. Renato asked himself why he changed course to confront Zenobia. The truth is, though, he wanted to see her, wasn't it? It had been a dozen years since Swordfu School. He'd followed every rumor about her, every scrap of news. Not that he still loved her. After all, she was his enemy. No, it was solely because, know your enemy. All right, maybe he should stop pretending. He knew exactly how she felt about it. But their love affair always ended with a tragic death. Unless, maybe he could find a way to dark tragedy. Surely he could. Couldn't he? How could you convince a firewall you're its friend? He couldn't do worse with Zenobia than he'd done with the core, could he? Two eyes, good. One eye, dead. Renato wasn't entirely sure how he was going to capture Zenobia. She'd be expecting him. And he didn't have Lapino to cook up a clever plan. Why was it again that he hadn't got the core? Maybe because the results tended to be disastrous. These streets were familiar. The Swordfu School was closed now. But he had been down that street 1,000 times. He knew that pub. He knew that alley. He knew the alley behind it much too well. No wonder Zenobia had chosen to invade this island herself.
once. He'd found a Superman issue #1 in mint condition in a jar he'd broken. He planned to keep breaking things until he had the whole series.
Reynardo slinked through Zenobia's ship, making no sound at all. Where were her guards? Finally, he reached her bedroom. She was curled up on her bed. Oh, he'd forgotten how beautiful she was. How sleek, how soft. He tapped her on the shoulder with his sword. She vanished. And he suddenly noticed he couldn't move except his mouth. In fact, soon he couldn't keep his mouth shut. He told Zenobia everything. Skyripper, the Iblistone, even where the secret rebel base was, until he was hoarse. It was some kind of truth spell. A talky truth spell. She called her father by Farspeaker Toad and filled His Majesty in. But why didn't he get the core? Croaked the Farspeaker in something like His Majesty's croak. Because I missed you, darling. Reynardo grinned. He doesn't even know why, frowned Zenobia. That makes no sense. It's a trap, shouted the Emperor. I'll meet you at the outpost, and I'll bring my interrogators. If Reynardo came face to face with the Emperor, maybe he could assassinate him. But maybe it would be smarter and safer to turn Zenobia against her father. You're lying, she said. Somehow you're lying. The spell hadn't worn off yet. He had... It was a short, safe landing. At least this part of the Nexus hadn't changed too much. Zenobia had been taking him to the Imperial outpost. She'd never expect him to go there by himself. Well, maybe she would. You never knew with her. Take a leap of faith, said the inscription. Reynardo knew Zenobia, and Zenobia knew him. She'd suspected a trick. Now he'd vanished. She would probably guess that was his plan all along. Perfect. Maybe she wouldn't use the Skyripper. At least not without taking it to the scientists at the observatory first. Meanwhile, the Emperor would be coming to the outpost personally. This could be good. Reynardo was face to face with the Emperor's bodyguard. They looked very tough, but the Emperor held them back.
Oh, where's my daughter?
And how would I know that? Reynardo grinned at him.
She lured me here so that you could kill me, didn't she?
Ah, don't be ridiculous, said Reynardo, trying his best to sound convincing. She loves you.
Oh, I knew it. The rabbit told me I couldn't trust her.
The Emperor hopped out the door. His phalanx of bodyguards retreated carefully. Reynardo heard someone call, "Arrest her!" as they left. Well, that's a job well done, thought Reynardo. Now the fleet will be in all sorts of disarray. But maybe he could find her in the mountains. She always used to go to the mountains to hide from the world. Maybe he could even turn her against her father.
Or maybe he could reap the benefits of the chaos he had sown. It was time to report to the Rebel Council, and then launch the attack on a divided and very confused Imperial fleet.
Reynardo felt very clever indeed. He'd told the Empire nothing but the truth, and now they suspected everything and everyone. So, why are you going to see Zenobia? He asked himself. It's not just a gloat, is it? No, of course not. Now, turning her against her father was good. It was very good. If she would actually join the rebels, that would be spectacular, right? That was definitely what he was doing. He wondered if he should have just told her the truth about her father. The Emperor had adopted her from a stray. That was the source of all her loyalty. But even then, he'd been dreaming of a bargain with the lost gods. They alone could make him immortal. The Emperor would have to seal that bargain with the life of someone who truly loved him. And who else truly loved the Emperor? But how could Reynardo tell her that now? Why would she ever believe him?
For a moment, Reynardo wished that somebody had been watching.
Good thing Reynardo didn't have vertigo. The funny thing was, she should have trusted him. He told her the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Oh, all right. The truth was, he'd played her like a fiddle. And how often had he ever done that? She was so smart. Smarter than him, really.
Odd that they never locked these things. Renato had given away the location of the secret base. Fortunately, the Emperor thought it was all a trap. He even mistrusted his own daughter. Renato couldn't have done better if he'd planned it.
What have you done to me? Zenobia demanded. My own father thinks I'm a traitor.
So?
But I'm loyal. So what? You're a bastard, Renato, she said. Now, you love that about me. You really did want the core, didn't you? And the Iblis stone. Yep, he gloated. You get all that? She said to the far speaker toad he'd failed to spot.
I am so relieved, my daughter,
said the far speaker. And Zenobia got into her ship and flew off. Damn it. The old far speaker trick. How had he missed it? This was very bad. Zenobia back in her father's good graces, and both of them ready to use the core and the Iblis stone.
He got back on the Farfarer.
Briefly, Renato thought of fleeing. The odds were surely against him. Never tell me the odds, he told himself. Odds confused him. He preferred to trust his gut. And so he sailed on to attack the fleet. Alone, if necessary. There were not many rebels here, and they were disorganized. The Empire had obviously attacked the secret base, the formerly secret base whose location Renato had so helpfully pinpointed on a map. There was still time to turn around, wasn't there? But Renato hated turning around. Heroes don't turn around, they just own their screw-ups and turn them into impossible victories, right?
The portal was heavily guarded. It must go someplace they really didn't want him to go.
This was much easier than free climbing. Renado's personal battle was going fairly well. The Ravens immediately in front of him were no quicker or tougher than usual. Where was the power of the core, blasting him off into the abyss?
And where was Zenobia? She must be up to something. But whatever it wasn't his problem. Not yet, anyway.
It was all going surprisingly well.
Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there? At last, he came to Zenobia and the Emperor. She was sealing up a kind of squat coffin, banded with lead.
So glad you're here.
Croaked the Emperor.
You will be witness to my final victory.
That's creepy, Dad, said Zenobia. But thank you. Because of your shenanigans, we tested the core. It's really unstable. It could have blown us all up.
It could, said Renato, a little frustrated that she'd figured it out.
Anyway, we already destroyed your secret base, so we don't need a super weapon. We're just going to bury it. Do we, torture you? Or give you a medal? Sometime later, Renato got an invitation to attend the Emperor's ritual sacrifice of his daughter. They took him out of his dungeon cell and gave him all his medals to wear. A little while after that, the lost gods returned, and the sun went black, and the Emperor ate his soul.
Oh, again?
But he already had all the secrets he needed. He was sure of that. He must have not used them the right way. What was the best, worst mistake he could make? Probably trusting that traitor Lupino. The book's pages fluttered to the beginning once again. Faster than before? And he fell. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game changer.
Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Renato knew that using it could go catastrophically wrong. But he was sure he could figure out how to use it safely. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it, to take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lupino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lupino had betrayed the rebellion.
And he had a gut feeling that he needed to use that to his advantage.